He called me a stain on their perfect night and ordered me thrown into the blizzard. It was my daughter's wedding, a wedding I paid for. They thought I was just an old mechanic. They were about to learn that some engines take a lifetime to build. If you're listening to this, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're watching from. My name is Arthur Vance, and I need to explain how the happiest day of my life became the day I realized I had lost my daughter. It started with the cold. The wind outside the Crystal Pavilion wasn't just blowing. It was attacking, a beast howling against the thick insulated glass. I watched the snow swirling violently in the spotlights by the grand entrance. Pure chaos. A valet, bundled up so only his eyes were visible, pointed towards a digital sign near the driveway. It blinked the temperature in angry red numbers, -4F. It was a brutal night. The kind of cold that sinks deep into your bones and settles there. The kind of cold that kills. Inside, however, it was a different universe. The pavilion was dripping with light. Fiber optic chandeliers looked like frozen waterfalls. Thousands of white orchids lined the walls. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, aged wine, and money. It was the smell of a world I didn't belong to anymore. Or rather, a world I had chosen to walk away from. A decision I was starting to question. I stood near the back, by the massive double doors, tugging at the collar of my suit. It was a good suit, sturdy dark wool, clean and pressed. I bought it 15 years ago for Elizabeth's funeral. It still fit, but next to the sea of custom Italian tuxedos and glittering designer gowns, I felt like a shadow, a smudge on their perfect photograph. I looked down at my hands, rough, scarred, the hands of a man who fixed things, who understood the mechanics of the world. I looked up at the glittering crowd. They understood none of that. They only understood the surface, and surfaces can be dangerously misleading. I saw Lily across the room. My daughter? My heart gave that familiar, painful squeeze. She was breathtaking. She looked so much like her mother, the same bright eyes, the same warm smile that could light up the darkest room. But tonight, Lily's smile was different, brittle, polished, fragile. It didn't reach her eyes. It was a mask. She was clinging to the arm of her new husband, Jason. Jason Sterling. He was polished, handsome in a sharp, artificial way, utterly obsessed with status. He hadn't built anything tangible in his life. He managed his family's money, constantly chasing what he called the elite. He didn't know what real strength looked like. They were standing on a raised platform, holding court. The mayor was there, and several prominent venture capitalists. Jason was desperate to impress for his new hedge fund. I noticed one of the investors, Mr. Harrison, a shark in a $1,000 suit. He was watching Jason, but he wasn't smiling. His eyes were narrowed. Calculating. He looked like a man who knew the numbers didn't add up. They were laughing at something Jason said, loud, jarring laughter. It cut through the classical string quartet playing in the background. It sounded fake. It sounded cruel. I took a deep breath. The air felt thin. Expensive. I needed to remind myself why I had lived this lie for the past 10 years. It all started when Elizabeth died. After she was gone, I was lost. We had built an empire together, starting from a single auto repair shop. Elizabeth was the brains, shrewd investments, technology patents, real estate. We turned that little shop into a vast fortune. We were wealthy, immensely so, but when she was gone, the money felt meaningless. Cold, heavy, it felt dangerous. I looked at Lily, then just a teenager, and I saw the wealth poisoning her. She was becoming entitled, judgmental. She valued brands, not character. Elizabeth would have hated it. So, I did something drastic. I hid it all. I put the empire under the management of Robert Chen, my oldest friend, my most trusted lawyer. And I downsized our lives, dramatically. We moved to a small house in the suburbs. I went back to managing my original auto shop. I told Lily that the investments had slowed down, that the shop was our primary income. I lied to my daughter, every single day, to save her soul. I wanted her to learn the value of hard work, the importance of kindness. I wanted her to find someone who loved her for who she was, not for the numbers in a bank account I pretended didn't exist. Now, watching her with Jason, I felt a sickening realization. My experiment hadn't just failed. It had exploded in my face. I hadn't saved her. I had delivered her to the wolves. I started walking through the crowd. Conversations dipped as I passed. I felt their eyes on me, judging the plain, aging man in the outdated suit. Who was this nobody interrupting the golden circle? I saw a familiar face near the bar. Elena, Elizabeth's sister. My sister-in-law. She was dressed simply, looking as out of place as I felt. Our eyes met. She gave me a small, sad shake of her head. She looks just like her, doesn't she? Elena whispered as I passed. Yes, I said. But Elizabeth had a heart of gold. Elena sighed. Jason prefers the kind of gold you can spend, Arthur. Be careful tonight. Her warning settled in my stomach like a stone. She knew something was wrong, too. I was intercepted near the towering ice sculpture of a swan by Jason's parents. William and Margaret Sterling, draped in old money and new debt, their faces tight with practiced smiles and poorly concealed disdain. Arthur, Margaret said, her voice like the tinkling of cheap glass. She looked me up and down, a faint smirk playing on her lips. So glad you could make it. She paused, letting the silence hang in the air. I trust you found the appropriate entrance? The implication was clear, the service entrance, the place for the help. The front door worked just fine, Margaret, I said evenly. My voice was steady. I held her gaze until she looked away, uncomfortable. William stepped forward. He looked at my shoes, sturdy, polished, but inexpensive. Careful not to track any grease on the marble, Arthur, he sneered, his voice loud enough for the people nearby to hear. This isn't one of your garages. I bit my tongue, hard. The urge to tell him that I owned the patent for the synthetic lubricant his luxury car depended on was almost overwhelming. The urge to tell him that my garage funded his entire failing lifestyle. I'll try to manage, I said, biting back the retort. I moved past them. Their arrogance was suffocating, but the real pain was waiting for me on the platform. I approached the platform. The air felt thinner up here, the laughter louder, the smiles brighter and faker. I looked at Lily's maid of honor, Sarah, a girl Lily had known since childhood. Sarah wasn't smiling. She was watching Lily and Jason with a look of profound sadness. Guilt? Even. She avoided my eyes. She knew this was wrong, but she was silent. They were all silent. I reached into my pocket. My hand closed around a small worn velvet box. Inside was a simple platinum wedding band. Elizabeth's, it wasn't flashy. No large diamonds, just beautifully crafted. It was the most precious thing I owned. I wanted Lily to have it, a reminder of a love that was real and enduring. Lily, honey, I said, my voice soft, rough around the edges. She turned. Her polished smile faltered when she saw me, a flicker of annoyance, embarrassment. She glanced nervously at Jason, at the important people watching. Dad, what is it? She whispered, her voice tight. We're about to do the first dance. You're interrupting. Interrupting, like I was a commercial break in her perfect show. I wanted you to have this, I said. I opened the box. The platinum gleamed faintly under the chandeliers. It was your mother's wedding ring. Lily looked at it. A flicker of recognition crossed her eyes. A memory of her mother, followed quickly by dismissal. Shame. She looked down at the massive, gaudy diamond on her finger, a rock that screamed money, but whispered nothing of love. Then Jason intervened. The air chilled. He peered at the box. He didn't smile. He sneered. He picked up the ring with 2 fingers, as if it were contaminated. As if my love for Elizabeth was something dirty, something worthless. What is this? He scoffed. The sound was loud in the sudden quiet around us. He was performing now, enjoying the spotlight. He held it up to the light, squinting theatrically. A trinket? It looks like a washer from a plumbing supply store. A few people nearby chuckled. Cruel, nervous laughter. My face burned. I felt the heat rising up my neck. I looked at Lily, waiting for her to defend it. To defend me. To defend her mother's memory. She didn't. She looked at the floor. Sarah, the maid of honor, looked away, tears glistening in her eyes. It's sentimental, Jason, Lily whispered. She pulled her hand away from his grip slightly. A small gesture. Too small. A small rebellion, but not enough. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were cold, ashamed, pitying. It doesn't really go with my ring, Dad. Her rejection hit me harder than any punch. She prioritized the image Jason demanded over the sentiment I offered. The sting was sharp, immediate, a betrayal of memory, a betrayal of everything we were, and it was about to get worse. Sentimental? Jason laughed loudly. He turned to the guests nearby, playing to the crowd. Arthur, my wife is wearing a flawless 8-carat diamond tonight. We don't deal in sentiment. He looked back at the platinum band, his face twisted in disgust. We deal in Bowden. The suit tossed the ring back into the box. It landed with a soft thud. He snapped the lid shut. Has none. He shoved the box back into my hand. My fingers closed around it automatically. The velvet felt rough against my skin. Now, if you'll excuse us, Jason said dismissively. His tone was one you'd use to shoo away a stray dog. We have important guests to entertain. He turned his back on me. A clear dismissal. A public execution of my role as father of the bride. Go find your seat, Arthur. He threw over his shoulder. I believe you're in the back. He was wrong. It wasn't just the back. It was exile. I already knew where I was sitting. I had checked the seating chart displayed on a golden easel near the entrance. The hierarchy was clearly labeled. The elite, the investors, the family. My name was at table 3. Table 3, the furthest table from the platform, right next to the service entrance. The doors swung open constantly. Waiters rushed in and out with trays of food. The noise from the kitchen clattered loudly, the smell of food overwhelming the scent of orchids. It was the table for the unwanted, the irrelevant. The embarrassments. They hadn't just hidden me. They had erased me. I walked away. The velvet box felt like lead in my hand. Humiliation was a cold wave washing over me. I had paid for this wedding, every orchid, every crystal, every drop of Dom Perignon. I had transferred the funds secretly through Robert. I let Jason believe that Lily had a small trust fund, a fund that barely covered the exorbitant costs he demanded. And now I was being banished to the kitchen, treated like a servant in the house I built, in the building I owned. I sat down at table 3-4. It was empty, except for Elena, Elizabeth's sister. She had been banished here too. They have no shame, Arthur, she said quietly, reaching across the table and squeezing my hand. Her eyes were filled with sympathy. No, I agreed, my voice hollow. They don't. I sat there for a long time. The noise from the ballroom was a dull roar. The laughter sounded distant. Hollow. I thought about Elizabeth. I wondered if she would be disappointed in me, in Lily. Had I done the right thing, hiding the truth from her? Had I protected her? Or had I just set her up for this devastating fall? I didn't know any more. I only knew the ache in my chest was unbearable. A young waiter rushed past. He carried a tray piled high with appetizers. He stopped short when he saw us sitting there. His face was open, kind, a rare sight in this room full of sharks. Sir, ma'am, are you all right? He asked. His tone was surprisingly gentle. We're fine, thank you, I said. I managed a weak smile. He looked at the empty table settings, then back at us, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. Would you like a drink? Some champagne? Before I could answer, a sharp voice cut through the air. James, what are you doing? The wedding planner. A stressed-looking woman named Victoria. She rushed over, her face tight with anxiety. A whirlwind of stress and expensive perfume. She hissed at the waiter. We have important guests waiting for drinks. Her eyes darted nervously toward the platform, toward Jason. Then she looked at me. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't see a person. She saw a problem. Mr. Sterling specifically instructed us not to prioritize this table. The realization hit me like ice water. The disrespect wasn't just social. It was systemic, organized. Jason had gone out of his way to ensure I was ignored. Isolated, even a simple glass of champagne was forbidden. The cruelty was calculated. And petty. It wasn't just an oversight. It was a deliberate attack. The waiter James looked ashamed. He looked at Victoria. But he's the father of the bride, Miss Victoria, he said, his voice low. I am aware of who he is, Victoria snapped. She smoothed her expensive dress, her voice sharp. Do your job, or you won't be paid. She stormed off, leaving a trail of anxiety in her wake. James looked at me apologetically. I'm sorry, sir, he whispered. He quickly placed a glass of water on the table. A small act of defiance. A small act of kindness. It's all I can do right now. Thank you, James, I said. In this hostile environment, it felt like a lifeline. The lights dimmed. The speeches were starting. I watched as Jason took the stage, microphone in hand. He looked victorious, like a Ingrid addressing his subjects. He talked about success, about ambition, about the future he and Lily were building. A future built on connections, power, wealth. He never once mentioned love. He spoke of Lily as an acquisition, a beautiful asset that completed his portfolio. My stomach turned. This wasn't a marriage, it was a merger, and I had financed it. Then it was the best man's turn. His speech was crude, thinly veiled references to Jason's wealth, Lily's beauty, shallow, crass, devoid of genuine emotion. The crowd loved it. They ate it up like the expensive caviar they were being served. I knew I had to speak. It was tradition. The father of the bride always gave a speech. I couldn't let this charade continue. I had to try to reach my daughter, to remind her of what truly matters. I stood up. My legs felt heavy, but my resolve was hardening. Arthur, don't, Elena whispered, grabbing my arm. It won't change anything. It will only make it worse. It can't get any worse, Elena, I said, pulling my arm away gently. I started walking towards the stage. The walk felt like a mile. Victoria saw me coming. Panic flared in her eyes. She rushed over, trying to block my path. Mr. Vance, you can't go up there, she hissed. Her voice was shrill with fear. Not fear of me, fear of Jason. The schedule is very precise, she continued, wringing her hands. Mr. Sterling will be furious. Then she said the words that confirmed everything. The truth that changed the meaning of the entire evening. He specifically said you were not to speak. It was an intentional silencing, a calculated move to erase me from the celebration I funded. She was more concerned about Jason's anger than my right to speak, than my relationship with my own daughter. He'll have to be, I said. Gently, but firmly, I pushed past her. She gasped, as if I had struck her. I reached the VIP section, the area around the platform cordoned off by thick velvet ropes, a barrier between the elite and the commoners. A barrier I was about to break. 2 large security guards stepped in front of me. They looked uncomfortable in their rented tuxedos. Access restricted, sir, the taller one said. His voice was deep, final. I am the father of the bride, I said. I kept my eyes fixed on the stage. On Lily, she was looking away. The other guard stepped forward. He was older, his face weary. I recognized the look in his eyes. He was a cop, probably off duty, making extra cash. I saw a name tag, Miller. We have orders from Mr. Sterling, sir, Miller said. His voice was firm, but not unkind. You are not allowed in this area. You need to return to your table. This physical barrier was a manifestation of the social barrier Jason had erected, a final attempt to silence me, to keep me in the shadows, to break me. They were about to find out I didn't break easily. If this story has you hooked, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. It helps us share these stories. And believe me, this confrontation was just getting started. I didn't stop. I didn't hesitate. I ducked under the velvet rope and kept walking. The guards lunged for me. Their hands grabbed my arms. Their grips were tight, strong, bruising. Miller hesitated for a fraction of a second, a flicker of doubt crossing his face, before grabbing my other arm. The crowd noticed the commotion. The whispers started, a wave of disapproval spreading through the room. The old man in the cheap suit, disrupting the perfect evening. They looked annoyed, impatient. They wanted the show to go on. They didn't care about the reality behind the facade. Jason saw me coming. His smile froze on his face, a mask of perfection cracking under pressure. He quickly handed the microphone to his best man. He strode toward me, his face hardening into a mask of pure fury. The polished veneer vanished. the ugliness underneath revealed. He met me at the foot of the stage. He shoved Miller aside and grabbed my arm himself. His grip was bruising, his face inches from mine. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed. His breath was hot, smelling of expensive whiskey. "Are you trying to ruin everything? Are you drunk?" "I need to speak to my daughter," I said. I tried to pull my arm away, but I was trapped, held captive at my own daughter's wedding. "You will not speak." Jason roared. He lost control completely. The arrogance boiled over into rage. The music stopped abruptly. The string quartet lowered their instruments. The entire ballroom went silent. Every single eye was on us. The spotlight found us. "You are an embarrassment," he shouted. His voice echoed in the vast, silent hall. The acoustics were perfect. Everyone heard every word. "Look at you," he spat, gesturing wildly at my wool suit. "You smell like grease." He pointed a finger directly in my face, his eyes blazing with contempt. The hatred was pure, undiluted. "You are a nobody, a washed-up old mechanic who thinks he can crash a party and mingle with the elite." He was enjoying this, humiliating me in front of everyone, asserting his dominance. Mr. Harrison, the investor, watched from the crowd, his face grim. "You don't belong here," he bellowed. "You stick out like a stain in this glittering crowd. You are beneath us." He turned to the security guards, his voice dripping with malice. "Get him out of here. And I don't mean the back table." He pointed toward the grand doors leading to the terrace, overlooking the frozen city. The blizzard howled outside, the snow piling up against the glass. The temperature was still 4 degrees. "I think you need some fresh air, Arthur," he sneered, his voice rising in triumph. "Maybe you should sit outside until the reception is over." He paused, making sure everyone understood the cruelty, the sheer viciousness of the act. Throwing an old man out into a blizzard. Maybe the cold will freeze that arrogance of yours and remind you of your place. A few people gasped, shocked, but many laughed. Cruel, nervous laughter. The sound of the powerful trampling the weak. The sound of a mob. I looked at Lily, my daughter, my little girl. She was standing at the head table, her face pale, her hands covering her mouth. She was crying, silent tears streaming down her face. Sarah was holding her hand, also crying, but she didn't move. She didn't speak. She didn't defend me. Her silence was the ultimate betrayal. In the critical moment, she chose the image, the status, the wealth. She chose Jason over her own father. It was the moment I knew my daughter. The little girl who used to help me in the shop, her hands smeared with grease, her face bright with laughter. She was truly gone. I had lost her. Jason tightened his grip on my arm. The security guards started dragging me toward the doors, toward the freezing night, toward the blizzard. The humiliation was complete. "You are not worthy of being with the elite," Jason shouted, savoring his victory, his triumph complete. The guests laughed louder, fueled by his arrogance, my humiliation. But I wasn't humiliated. I was just profoundly sad. Sad for Lily. Sad for Jason. Sad for all these people who thought this glittering cruelty was the meaning of life. And then I smiled. It was a small, sad smile. A smile of clarity. A smile of a man who realized he had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. The weight lifted. The fear evaporated. I was free. The time for hiding was over, Jason faltered. He wasn't expecting a smile. He expected me to beg, to rage, to break. My calm unnerved him. His grip loosened slightly. "Wipe that smirk off your face, old man," he yelled, his voice shrill, a hint of fear creeping in. He gave me a final shove toward the doors. Suddenly, a voice cut through the tension like a knife, a voice that commanded attention, a voice that radiated authority. "Take your hands off him, now." It was Robert Chen, my lawyer, my friend, the keeper of my secret. He was standing near the stage, his face thunderous, his presence filling the room. He had arrived late, delayed by the storm, but his timing was impeccable. Jason looked at him, confused, annoyed by the interruption. Another old man in a suit, But this suit was different. The suit screamed power. Real power. "Who are you?" Jason sneered, trying to regain control. "Stay out of this, old man, or you'll be thrown out too." Robert ignored him. He walked toward me, his eyes fixed on Jason with utter contempt. The security guards, including Miller, sensed the shift in power. They released my arms. They stepped back nervously. The air in the room changed. The temperature dropped. "You think you are the elite, Mr. Sterling?" Robert said, his voice booming across the silent ballroom, every word precise, deadly.
"You think you have power?"
He stopped in front of Jason, looked him up and down, the same way William Sterling had looked at me. But this time, the judgment was different. "You are nothing but a pretentious, arrogant fool." Jason puffed up his chest, trying to intimidate Robert. It didn't work. "How dare you?" he sputtered. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my family is? We built this city." "You built nothing," Robert said, his voice dripping with disgust. "I know exactly who you are. You are a fraud." He stepped closer to Jason, the confrontation escalating. "Your family's fortune is built on debt and deception," Robert continued, relentless. "You are on the verge of bankruptcy." A collective gasp echoed through the ballroom, the sound of illusion shattering. "You are desperately trying to secure loans for your failing hedge fund," Robert exposed. "Leveraging the connections you hope to make tonight." Jason's parents, William and Margaret, looked horrified, their faces ashen, their carefully constructed facade crumbling. Mr. Harrison, the venture capitalist, nodded slowly. He knew it all along. He exchanged nervous glances with the other investors. The truth was spreading like fire. "And you just made the biggest mistake of your miserable life," Robert said, his voice low, menacing. He pointed at me. The spotlight shifted, illuminating me. The old man in the wool suit, the mechanic with the rough hands. "This man," Robert declared, his voice ringing with authority. "The man you just called unworthy. The man you just called unworthy. The man you tried to throw out in the freezing cold." He paused, letting the tension build, ensuring every single person in the room was listening. "The man whose generosity paid for this entire charade." Another pause. The silence, absolute. The sound of a world turning upside down. "This is Arthur Vance," Robert announced. And then the final blow. "And you, Mr. Sterling, are standing in his building." The silence that followed was deafening. "What?" Jason whispered, his face draining of all color. The arrogance evaporated, leaving behind a terrified little boy. "He owns the Crystal Pavilion," Robert continued, his voice rising. "He owns the entire block." He turned to William Sterling, delivering the next blow. "He owns the bank that holds the mortgage on your family's failing business," Robert said. "The mortgage that is currently in default." William stumbled back, clutching his chest. Margaret fanned herself furiously, her eyes rolling back in her head. Robert stepped closer to Jason, his voice sharp, precise. "And the venture capitalists you were trying to impress tonight?" Robert gestured towards Mr. Harrison and the others. "They all answer to him." He explained the intricate web of investments. The silent partnerships. He is the silent partner behind Vance Holdings. Robert revealed. The largest technology incubator in the country. The whispers started. Vance Holdings. The name was legendary. The silent giant. The elusive empire. Robert looked out at the crowd, his voice rising again, delivering the final, devastating truth. "He's not just rich," Robert shouted. "He's a billionaire." The word hung in the air, heavy, undeniable, the truth exposed. Jason stumbled back, his mouth opening and closing. No sound came out. He looked like he was going to be sick. He looked at me, at my wool suit, my rough hands, as if seeing me for the first time. The mechanic was the king. William and Margaret Sterling were frozen, their empire of arrogance shattered in an instant. The humiliation complete. Lily stared at me, her eyes wide with shock, confusion, disbelief. "Dad," she whispered, her voice trembling, the word foreign on her lips. I finally spoke. My voice was calm, steady, but it filled the room. The power wasn't in the volume. It was in the truth. "I never cared about the money. I said. I looked directly at Lily, my heart aching. Your mother and I, we believed in values, not valuables. We wanted you to understand the worth of kindness, integrity, love. I looked down at my hands, the hands that had built an empire and fixed countless cars. I lived simply because I wanted you to see me, not my wealth. I continued. I went back to the auto shop because it reminded me of where we started, of what truly matters. I turned to Jason. The disappointment was overwhelming, the sadness profound. You thought you were elite, I said, my voice heavy with sorrow. You thought wealth was a weapon, to wield against those you deemed beneath you. I looked at the velvet box still clutched in my hand. Elizabeth's ring. You humiliated me, I said, insulted my wife's memory, and betrayed my daughter's trust. And you did it all for money. I shook my head slowly. You are not elite, Jason. You are just poor. Poor in character, poor in spirit. I looked around the magnificent ballroom. The crystals seemed colder now, the orchids already wilting, the beauty fading before my eyes. You wanted this life, Jason, I said. This glittering facade, but it's all built on a foundation of sand. I paused, and the tide has just come in. I nodded to Robert. It was time to end this. Robert, I said, please inform the bank that we will not be extending the Sterling family's loans. Their business is no longer a viable investment. William Sterling let out a strangled cry. Margaret started sobbing hysterically. And the hedge fund. I looked directly at Mr. Harrison. I believe the investors now have a clear picture of Mr. Sterling's character. Mr. Harrison nodded curtly. Indeed we do, Mr. Vance. He and the other venture capitalists were already moving towards the exits. Their faces grim, they wouldn't touch Jason now. His name was poison, his reputation ruined. Jason fell to his knees. A broken man, his future, his ambition, his identity, evaporated before his eyes. He was nobody. And this wedding, I said. I looked at Victoria, the wedding planner. She was trembling near the entrance. Victoria, I said, my voice firm but not cruel. The reception is cancelled. Effective immediately. She nodded nervously. Please ensure the staff are paid triple for their trouble tonight, I added. Yes, Mr. Vance, she whispered. Right away, sir. Margaret Sterling finally found her voice, shrill with panic. Cancelled? But this is outrageous, she shrieked. Who will pay for all this? The flowers? The food? We are ruined. I looked at her coldly, the woman who had treated me like a servant. I already paid, I said. But since my presence was so embarrassing, since I was treated with such disrespect, I believe the failure to provide a hospitable environment constitutes a breach of contract. I paused. I expect a full refund from the Sterling family. They had nothing left to give. I knew that, but the point had to be made. The irony was complete. I turned back to Lily. She was sobbing, her face buried in her hands. The princess dress looked like a costume now. The fairy tale wedding had become a nightmare. I walked toward her. The crowd parted before me, the silence broken only by Lily's tears and Margaret's hysterical wails. She looked up at me, her makeup ruined, her eyes filled with shame, regret, and a flicker of understanding. Sarah stood beside her, looking equally devastated. Dad, I'm so sorry, Lily whispered, her voice broken. I didn't know. I was so caught up in it all. Jason, he promised me everything. She looked around the room, at the chaos, the destruction. I was so ashamed of you, she confessed. The words hurt, but they were honest. Of our simple life, I thought. You thought money was everything, I finished for her. My voice gentle but firm. I blame myself, Lily. I tried to protect you from the wealth, but I didn't prepare you for the world. I shook my head sadly. I didn't teach you how to recognize true worth in the face of overwhelming greed. I took the velvet box out of my pocket, opened. Elizabeth's platinum ring gleamed in the light. Simple, enduring, real. Your mother would have wanted you to be happy, I said. I placed the box on the table in front of her. But not like this, sweetheart. Not at the cost of your soul. She looked at the ring. her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, the weight of her choices crashing down on her. I looked at her last time. My daughter, lost in the glittering wreckage of her choices. You have a lot to learn about true worth, Lily, I said gently, and you won't learn it here. I turned and walked away. The crowd parted before me like the Red Sea. The whispers now were different. Whispers of awe, respect, shame. I passed Elena. She nodded at me, tears in her eyes, but a small smile on her lips. Pride. As I walked past table 34, I saw the young waiter, James. He was watching me, his eyes wide with disbelief. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a business card. It was plain, simple, Arthur Vance. Auto mechanic. James, I said, handing him the card. You showed me kindness when no one else did. That is a rare quality. I paused. If you ever need a job, a real job, call me. He took the card, stunned. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I passed the security guard. Miller. He looked at me, his expression unreadable. Mr. Vance, he said, nodding respectfully. Robert joined me at the exit, his hand on my shoulder, a silent support. Are you all right, Arthur? He asked, his voice filled with concern. I don't know, I admitted. I felt an immense weariness settle over me. I feel tired and very, very sad. I pushed open the heavy glass doors, stepped out into the freezing night. The blizzard had calmed down. The snow was falling softly, covering the city in a blanket of white. Silent, peaceful. The cold air felt clean. Honest? Refreshing. It didn't bother me anymore. The cold inside was far worse. I looked back at the Crystal Pavilion, glowing against the dark sky. A beautiful prison, built on greed and arrogance. I started walking, the snow crunching under my feet. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt a profound sense of loss, but also a sense of peace. I had honored Elizabeth's memory. I had defended my legacy, not the financial one, but the moral one. I was Arthur Vance, a mechanic, a father. And that, I realized, was enough. The aftermath of the wedding was swift, brutal. The story spread like wildfire through the city's elite circles, a cautionary tale about arrogance and the hidden nature of true power. The downfall of the Sterling family was spectacular. The bank called in their loans, Mr. Harrison, and the other investors pulled out completely. Their business collapsed. Jason's hedge fund evaporated before it even launched. He and his parents disappeared from the city, disgraced, broken, forgotten. Lily was devastated. The marriage was annulled almost immediately, but the emotional scars remained, deep, painful. She moved back into the small, comfortable house in the suburbs, the one she had been so desperate to escape. Elena moved in for a few weeks to help her. The first few weeks were filled with violence, tears. She kept her mother's wedding ring on her bedside table, the only remnant of her disastrous wedding day. She barely left her room. The shame was overwhelming. I gave her space. I didn't push her. I knew she needed time to process the shock, the realization of her mistakes. I focused on my work at the auto shop, the familiar smell of oil and sawdust, a comfort in the turmoil, the simple honesty of fixing broken things. One evening, about a month after the wedding, I was sitting in the living room, reading a book. Lily came downstairs. She looked pale, thin, but her eyes were clear. The fog had lifted. She sat down opposite me, twisting her mother's ring around her finger. The massive diamond from Jason was gone. I sold the engagement ring, she said quietly. Her voice was hesitant. I donated the money to the homeless shelter downtown. Sarah helped me. I nodded slowly. It was a start, a small step towards redemption. I was so blind, Dad, she said, her voice trembling. I was so caught up in the glitter, the promises. I wanted that life so badly. I was willing to sacrifice everything for it. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Including you. The confession hung in the air, heavy, painful, but necessary. I was ashamed of you, she whispered, ashamed of our simple life. I thought money was the only thing that mattered. I forgot everything you and Mom taught me. I know, sweetheart, I said. my voice gentle. We live in a world that constantly tells us that wealth is the measure of a person. It's easy to get lost. But you weren't lost, Dad, she said, her voice growing stronger. You had everything, and you chose to live simply. You chose integrity over arrogance. She shook her head in disbelief. I didn't understand. I thought you were weak, but you were the strongest person in that room. She looked me in the eyes, her gaze filled with remorse, and a newfound understanding, a maturity that hadn't been there before. Can you ever forgive me, Dad? She asked. Her voice broke. I looked at my daughter, the child I loved more than anything in the world. The pain of her betrayal was still there, a scar that would never fully heal. But the love was stronger, the forgiveness unconditional. I already have, Lily, I said. I opened my arms. She rushed into my embrace, sobbing uncontrollably. We held each other for a long time. The silence of the house broken only by her tears, the sound of healing. The reconciliation was slow. It wasn't easy. There were difficult conversations, painful realizations, but it was real. Lily started volunteering at the auto shop. She learned how to change oil, how to fix a carburetor, how to talk to customers with honesty and respect. She discovered the satisfaction of working with her hands, of creating something tangible, something real. She rediscovered the values her mother had cherished: humility, hard work, kindness. She also started taking business classes at the local community college. She realized she had a sharp mind, like her mother, but she wanted to use it for good, not for greed. The transformation was remarkable. A year later, she met a man named David. He was a teacher, with a kind smile, a passion for social justice. He didn't care about money or status. He loved Lily for who she was. Flaws and all, I recognized him immediately. It was James, the young waiter from the wedding. He had called me a few months later, looking for a job. I had helped him finish his studies, get his teaching degree. He was a good man, a kind man, the kind of man Elizabeth would have wanted for Lily. Their wedding was small, intimate. It was held in the backyard of our house, under the old oak tree. Robert was there, Elena, Sarah, even Officer Miller, who had become a friend of the family. There were no crystals, no orchids, no elite guests. Just family and close friends, laughter and love. I walked Lily down the aisle, my heart overflowing with pride. She was wearing a simple white dress. Elizabeth would have loved it, and around her finger she wore her mother's platinum wedding band. The circle complete. As I gave her away, I whispered in her ear, "This is true work, sweetheart." She smiled, her eyes shining with genuine happiness. A smile that reached her eyes. A smile that was real. I know, Dad. I know. I looked around at the smiling faces, the warm sunlight filtering through the leaves. This was my elite. This was my legacy. And it was worth more than all the billions in the world. I looked up at the sky, imagining Elizabeth watching us, smiling. We were home. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.